What's up guys, 4 or 5 Games here, bringing you another Blender tutorial. Today we are studying in the art of UV unwrapping, a basic need for 3D modelists that want to complete their project after they modeled it. It's a really necessary part of making models. Basically, without it, your mesh looks terrible, because textures really brings out the life in your objects, and I'm basically going to show you guys how to do it, and I'll be doing it inside of Blender 2.66. Now just let me bring up this screen share for you guys. It's an amazing little tool. It truly is. And now you guys can see every little detailed thing I do. For our UV unwrapping, we're going to use a box. Why a box? Because a box is very easy. I can go more into depth with a more complicated mesh, but I could always just save that for a more advanced UV tutorial. This one is just a basic UV unwrapping, and by basic, I'm just going to show you all the little shortcut keys just on a simple object. And by simple object, we have a cube. By going into edit mode, we're able to pull up all the faces, and for the faces, it demonstrates what we're going to be unwrapping. And for most people, unwrapping, we'd be clicking U to unwrap. And just pull over our image editor. Sorry, my computer's being very slow because I'm actually compressing some files. It's ridiculous. And what we have over here is our faces. And by selecting new image, just type in here cube UV. And we have the basic width and height by Blender. Alpha means for PNG, invisible background. And what I like to do is I like to use a UV grid. And what the UV grid does is it puts a checkered background behind your UV and shows you what you're working with. For example, when you texture an object, it will show you what it looks like. And by going into texture mode over here, you can see what it would look like. You'd think it'd be all fine and dandy by having this. Only the problem with just UV unwrapping is it compacts all the stuff up top of each other, and it doesn't really help. And what we need to do, for example, if we're making like a dice, we need multiple faces that aren't the same thing. And I have an image over here which will show you what it would look like if we were to unwrap our cube. I grabbed this image off of Google, just typed in cube unwrapped, and this is the first image I grabbed. And basically what we have is it shows you what a cube would look like if you were to unwrap it. And by this, it shows you what we're going to be using a thing called marking seams. And what marking seams does is it's basically telling an object where it wants to cut. And what cutting does is if you were to take a cookie and you're to cut it in half, it'd be marking a seam in half. Not like a seam in half, but the middle of the cookie in half. And how we would do this is I will show you how we're going to do this. Over here, by going into edge select mode, we are going to select the edges of what we're going to be cutting. And the way we cut edges is by selecting our edges that we want to cut, and then we want to hit Control E. And what Control E does is it brings up our edge menu and gives us multiple things we can do to an edge. And what we want to do is select Mark Seam. What marking the seam does is it will highlight the edges where the seams will be by giving it a color of red, and that's where we'll be cutting. And now we just unwrap it, and what we have here is our object is unwrapped, but without having all the faces stacked up top of each other, it has them individually placed. So if we go over here to our texture mode, we will see that we have our individual faces. So if we added a texture beneath our UV of like a dice, we'll see that each individual face is a different picture. Some interesting tools that people generally don't know about UVing is the W menu. It is helpful. It's hard to explain. It's just helpful. I couldn't think of the exact word, but it will come to me. What it basically does is it allows us to line our vertices up by like either X, Y, or just plain straighten it out. And the way it works is if we had our vertice here, just place it here, it's all messed up, and we're like, how shall we fix it? By selecting our row of vertices, we merely bring up our align menu, and I just like to click auto align, and what it does is it straightens out our line. We do have like this one that's not aligned, but simple auto align, and it fixes it. And it's a very helpful tool if you're having a problem with like if you UV a cylinder, it'll be all strange, and it's very helpful when you auto line all the vertices and then you add on a simple square texture. It works amazing. Another helpful tool to use would be the tool called pin, and what it does is it pins these vertices. And basically what it means by pinning is if we were to unwrap this a different method by selecting some other seams, it will still keep these vertices right here. So if we pin all these and we didn't have these here like pinned, and we were to unwrap it a different method, then these would be somewhere else over here, and all these would stay the same. And that is basically the simple method to UV unwrapping.